is Y News with Angelo Castro III, William Theo, and Darlene Basingan.
Good evening. Several domestic and international flights have suffered delays in NAIA Terminal 1 today. Rajel Adora will tell us why.
Airport authorities decided to implement an emergency shutdown of the international runway in Ninoy Aquino International Airport today. This after two potholes were discovered. Airport officials say they do not want to put the life of airline passengers in danger. The repair took about 3 hours.
May possibility yan na wag naman sana mangyari. Ma-off yung ng piloto at na baka sumadsyad o mahirap na mangyari pa yung pagkaganon. Maraming may involved na properties and lives ng pasahero.
NAIA explained the location of potholes in the runway is at the touchdown area, which received stronger impact during takeoff and landing. Due to the shutdown, 9 domestic and international flights were diverted to Clark Airport in Pampanga and in Davao Airport, while 15 flights were delayed. One of the affected passengers is General Manager of Manila International Airport Authority, Ed Monreal.
The captain made an announcement that there was an emergency repair. Awa ng Diyos, nasa area lang po kami at nagantay.
Runway operations resumed to normal at around 1:30 in the afternoon today. According to MIAA, the runway will be overlaid on the first quarter of 2018. Rajel Adora, UNTV News Rescue, Philippines.
A strong earthquake hit parts of Visayas at 4 in the afternoon earlier. Fivox said a magnitude 6.5 earthquake hit Haro, Leyte with depth of 2 kilometers and was tectonic in origin. The earthquake was felt in Cebu, Tacloban, La Carlota, and Rojas City in Negros Occidental and Dinagat Islands. Fivox said did not issue any tsunami warning but warns of more aftershocks. The agency has yet to determine the worth of damages caused by the earthquake. Meanwhile, consultation begins on the petition for wage increase in the National Capital Region. The petitioners insist that the current minimum wage in NCR is not sufficient as compared to the increasing prices of basic commodities. Grace Casin will tell us why.
Rowena struggles to make ends meet, having only her husband's salary for being a minimum wage earner. Aside from paying the monthly utility bills and house rentals, they always fall short of budget for food and needs for their children who are going to school. And when someone in the family gets sick, she worries where to get money for medication.
Dati po yung sa pang-ulam namin, nakabili pa po kami ng 1 kilong karne ng baboy. Ngayon, kalahating kilo na lang, ganun. Pag po gipit talaga, isda, ganun na lang po. Tsaka gulay, tuyo, noodles.
Rowena's situation is one example of 3 groups had mentioned in their petition for increase in the minimum wage of workers in the National Capital Region. They are asking for additional 176 to 285 pesos to the current 491 minimum wage. One of the labor groups explained that 491 minimum wage is not enough to sustain the needs of a family of 5 members, noting the increasing prices of utility bills, fare, rice, medicine, and other basic commodities.
Amin pong hinihiling ay dapat 675 ang dapat daily minimum wage na ng mga manggagawa dito sa Metro Manila.
But the Employers Confederation of the Philippines is not in favor of the proposal, saying the Congress is the only body authorized to implement wage hike.
There are certain 10 factors which must be considered in evaluating what would be proper minimum wage.
2 more consultations are set to be held before the Wage Board decides on whether to approve the wage hike or not. Last year, labor groups also asked for 154 peso increase but only 10 pesos was approved. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The suspect in the killing of the 5 members of the Carlos family in San Jose Del Monte, Bulacan, reveals he was tortured by cops to confess to the crime. Victor Cosare will tell us why.
The suspect in the gruesome massacre of 5 family members in Bulacan last week is now denying that he committed the crime. Carmelo Ibanez alias Miling says he confessed to the crime because cops tortured and threatened to kill him.
Gabi po nangyari po yun, gabi.
Gabi?
In-invite po kami dito. Ayun.
Saan ka sinaktan? Saan ka pinahirapan?
Dito po sa dibdib.
Anong ginawa sa dibdib mo?
Sinuntok.
Sinuntok? Ano pa?
Binalot po ng plastic sa ulo.
Nang?
Plastic po.
Basket?
Plastic sa ulo? Martilyo? Ikot?
But the chief of the San Jose Del Monte Bulacan Police denies the allegation.
Walang katotohanan ng torture.
Opo, hindi po namin gagawin yun. Wala pong pananakit, pinabubulaanan ko po yun. Wala pong ganun na ginawa sa kanya dito. At simula ng unang araw na nandito siya, nandito na po ako. At ganun nga po, isinauli namin siya sa kanyang pamilya, sa harapan ng kanyang parents, kapatid, lahat-lahat nandoon. Kung meron kaming ginawang masama sa kanya, doon pa lang.
Ibanez previously claimed committing the crime, saying he was under the influence of illegal drugs and alcohol. But when the result of his drug test came out, he tested negative.
Meanwhile, the father and husband of massacre victims in San Jose Del Monte, Bulacan, has applied for admission to the Witness Protection Program. Dexter Carlos Sr. was given provisional coverage while the Department of Justice, or DOJ, is evaluating his application whether he is qualified to the WPP. He met with Justice Secretary Vitaliano Aguirre earlier this morning.
Let me just tell everybody that I have declared martial law for Mindanao.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has finally released the full text of its decision on the petitions against the declaration of martial law in Mindanao. It says Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno and 3 other justices dissented with the majority. Roderick Mendoza explains why.
The declaration of martial law in Mindanao has sufficient factual basis and is constitutional. This is the finding of the court as it dismisses the petitions against President Rodrigo Duterte's Proclamation 216. Associate Justice Mariano del Castillo penned the decision, which was concurred in by 10 other justices. The court says it is no longer important whether all the President's bases for the declaration are absolutely correct. It is enough that he had shown evidence that would support the belief that there is rebellion happening in Marawi City. The court noted nowhere in the Constitution it says that martial law should be limited to the place of armed uprising. Imposing martial law in Mindanao is also to avoid enemy reinforcement and to cut their supply coming from other parts of Mindanao. Limiting it to Marawi will defeat the purpose and will only make it useless. Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno and Justice Alfredo Benjamin Caguiwa agree with the declaration, but it should be limited to 3 provinces in Mindanao. These are Lanao del Sur, where Marawi is located, and Maguindanao and Sulu, where significant support from Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters and Abu Sayyaf are coming from. Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio is convinced that martial law should be declared in Marawi, but it would be against the Constitution to declare it in other parts of Mindanao where there is no actual rebellion. Justice Marvic Leonen is the lone justice who opposed the martial law declaration. He says it is unnecessary since there is no rebellion and the military can defeat the terrorist groups without it. Roderick Mendoza, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
Malacanang denies reports that President Rodrigo Duterte attempted to initiate a negotiation with ISIS-linked Maute terrorist group. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
In an exclusive report of Reuters, a Muslim leader allegedly revealed that a senior aide of President Rodrigo Duterte approached him to use his connection and talk to the leaders of the Maute terrorist group for back-channel talks. 2 Marawi sources allegedly confirmed that the president had worked behind the scene to hold talks with Maute brothers Omar and Abdullah. This was a few days after the terrorist group seized Marawi City. However, The process allegedly did not push through after the May 31 speech of President Duterte, wherein he said he would not negotiate with a terrorist. This report is vehemently denied by Malacanang.
Up to this point, we have no verified reports that there were efforts to initiate such actions as Aga Khan Sharif claims. Let me be clear that the position of the palace and the president is not to negotiate with terrorists, including these local terrorist groups.
It can be recalled that President Duterte declined the offer of the mother of the Maute brothers, Farhana Maute, who sought a dialogue with the government. Except President Duterte, Secretary Abella said he has sources that will prove President Duterte did not initiate any action to deal with the terrorist.
We do talk to our sources, and like I said, there is nothing verifiable.
Did you talk to the president also if it's true?
He's not my source. He's my principal.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Meanwhile, in an interview in Malaybalay, Bukidnon, President Rodrigo Duterte maintains that he will never negotiate with terrorists or with criminals. He also said he is only talking with revolutionary groups such as MILF and MNLF who are inspired by their principles. But the president said it is possible that MILF and MNLF might have the initiative to negotiate with the Maute terrorist group.
No, I didn't. No, he's a pretender. I'd never talk to terrorists, that's one. I will never talk to criminals and to terrorists. But I would talk to revolutionaries who are imbued with a principle of their, kagaya nitong MIMN. The MIMN probably have started initiatives there. But kung magaling sa akin ako maghingi sa mga kriminal pati terorista, imposible.
United States Ambassador Sung Kim assures that his government will continue its support to the Philippines, especially in Marawi City. Nel Maribuhok is in Makati City to tell us why live. Yes, Nel, go ahead.
The U.S. Ambassador Sung Kim assures the Philippine government that the U.S. will not cut its support, especially this time that the country is facing crisis in Marawi City. During today's celebration of the 241st anniversary of U.S. independence, some Philippine government officials were seen at the venue of the celebration. Present in the event is Foreign Affairs Secretary and Peter Cayetano, Senators Franklin Trilon, J.V. Ercito, and Vice President Leni Robredo. In his remarks, U.S. Ambassador Sung Kim assures that his country, U.S., will continue its support the Philippines, especially in Mindanao, wherein the Philippine military is battling against the Maute terror group.
Even as we have the celebration tonight, our thoughts are with the armed forces of the Philippines and the residents of Marawi. They're going through a very, very difficult time, and I want to assure them that we will continue to support them in any way possible going forward.
Also, the U.S. ambassador recalled the strong alliance of the Philippines and the United States through the years, even since the previous administration. He also guarantees that they are ready and willing to support the troops on the ground against terrorism. Darlene?
Thank you, Nel Maribuhok, reporting live from Makati City. More than 100 teachers from the conflict-torn Marawi City underwent psychological debriefing today. Roby de Guzman tells us why.
Over 100 teachers from Marawi City were given psychological first aid to help them recover from emotional stress and trauma they experienced from the crisis in Marawi City. Department of Education rendered the counseling with the help of the Psychological Association and the Cultural Center of the Philippines.
The psychological first aid po kasi aims to at least on a daily basis help the teachers understand what they're going through and be able to handle it. Kasi kailangan mo yun to restore the well-being of teachers kasi medyo mabigat yung sitwasyon.
So meron tayong module on validating and normalizing feelings, calming down and controlling one's emotion. We also have linking or addressing and identifying needs and at the same time yung sources of strength.
According to Rokaya Balindong, one of the teachers, though the conflict caused them much pain, they still want to return to their hometown and continue their service as teachers.
I'm praying and I'm very hopeful na makabalik kami. Kasi mahirap pag hindi sa sarili mong bayan, you can feel discriminated. Mahirap. So, pabalik kami.
Sana maging magpakatatag sila. Sana yung mga natutunan nila dito ay ibabahagi din nila sa ibang mga guro na hindi nakasali dito or kahit hindi guro sa pamilya nila.
The teachers expressed their hopes of recovery and peace again in Marawi City through their drawing activity. Robbie de Guzman, UNTV, News and Rescue, Philippines.
The vessels of the Philippines and Indonesian Navy participating in the two countries' border patrol exercises are now en route to Sarangani province. Victor Cosare tells us why.
Two vessels of the Philippines and Indonesian Navy are now sailing to Sarangani for a medical, dental, and civic activities in Balut Island, which is set on Friday as part of the 2017 Coordinated Patrol exercises. After Sarangani, they will go to the oceans of Tawi-Tawi.
We will be going outside the boundaries of Eastern Mindanao Command because our borders between Indonesia and the Philippines goes all the way to Tawi-Tawi.
They would also conduct patrols in the route of the newly opened roll-on, roll-off or RoRo vessel from General Santos City to Bitong, Indonesia.
The Indonesian Navy has also committed the same, that whenever that particular vessel is in their waters, they will be also patrolling the areas to prevent any untoward incident towards the RoRo vessel.
The Philippine-Indonesia border patrol exercises that began on Tuesday is expected to end on July 12 in Manado, Indonesia. Victor Cosare, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Next on Y News. The Bureau of Corrections files a complaint against one staff member for theft inside the new Bilibid prisons.
Analysts say the proposed 8% tax on self-employed and professionals will likely affect the business sector.
More than 90 violators were apprehended in the first day of the implementation of the modified Anti-Distracted Driving Act.
Y News will be right back. The Bureau of Corrections has filed a case against one member of the PNP Special Action Force assigned in the new Bilibid Prison. Monokson will tell us why.
Bureau of Corrections Director Benjamin de los Santos confirmed that one member of the PNP Special Action Force committed an offense inside the National Penitentiary. The said SAF member allegedly stole 200,000 pesos and a flat-screen television unit from inside the penitentiary. In a statement, De Los Santos said the SAF member conducted an unauthorized drug raid and even provided SAF uniforms to 2 inmates. The crime was exposed when the SAF confessed to the chaplain, but he said couldn't return the money because it was already shared with other men. The Philippine National Police meanwhile said that if one SAF member committed a crime, it does not mean that all SAF members are involved therein. Nevertheless, the PNP supports the filing of a case to whoever of their men proven to have committed a crime.
This is an individual act, hindi ho sanction ng unit. So wag ho nating sabihin na SAF yan. Kaya nga ang hinihingi natin identify natin. At muli, hindi ho magto-tolerate ng mali ang liderato ng PNP.
Last Wednesday, PNP Chief Ronald De La Rosa visited the new Bilibid Prison to check on the SAF members if they are involved in the resurgence of drug trade inside NBP. But none of them managed to inform the PNP chief regarding the issue of the said SAF member.
Ang tataning namin was this raised to the commander of the alleged policemen involved. Wala pong nabanggit na tungkol dito sa isang trooper na sinasabing gumawa ng isang pagnanakaw.
De Los Santos said that they are investigating 6 more cases of staff members allegedly involved in corruption. The Bucor director refused to give details if the policemen are involved in the resurgence of illegal drug trade inside the new Bilibid Prison. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines is thoroughly studying the possibility of assigning members of the Philippine Marines inside the new Bilibid prisons or NBP. Leah Ilagan will tell us why.
Philippine National Police Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa has informed President Rodrigo Duterte of his plan to pull out members of the PNP Special Action Force from the new Bilibid Prison or NBP. This following their alleged involvement in the issue of illegal drug trade inside the National Penitentiary. He also mentioned the recommendation to replace them with the members of the Philippine Marines.
Philippine National Police Chief Ronald de la Rosa has already talked to the President on the deployment of Marines to replace the SAF personnel in the Bilibid, which was put on hold and it was overtaken by events because of the Marawi Rebellion.
However, the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP says it will not be easy to deploy Marines inside the NBP as there is still a crisis in Marawi City. AFP spokesperson Brigadier General Restituto Padilla says its government troop has its own role and they have big responsibilities in bringing the situation in Marawi back to normal.
Nakasaad sa batas lahat ng mga nakatalagang ahensya at ang kanilang mga tungkulin. May ahensya po na nakasaad sa kanilang tungkulin na magbantay sa mga pasilidad na to. So sila po dapat ang nangangalaga at nagbibigay ng seguridad.
General Padilla assures the military will study the said proposal should it be formally requested to them.
Tatanggapin natin yung request na yan at pag-aaralan natin. At kung kakayanin natin na magdagdag ng pwersa para matulungan sila.
The AFP is confident that Marines' reputation will not be tarnished like what happened to the members of SAF.
Hindi naman po kami nangangamba na ang disiplina ng ating mga kasundaluhan, Marines man, Army man, Air Force man o Navy ay masisira. Dahil lang gagampanan nilang tungkulin ay pwede naman po nating siguraduhin na mga gagawa na maayos.
Leah Ilagan, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Aguinaldo.
The Tax Management Association of the Philippines says the proposed imposition of an 8% tax on professionals and self-employed might affect the growth of the business sector in the country. Aiko Miguel explains why.
The passage of the proposed imposition of income tax to self-employed and professionals might affect the small and medium enterprises or SMEs in the country. Based on the administration's tax reform package, employees with a monthly income of less than 250,000 pesos would not need to pay taxes. If their earnings exceed 5 million pesos, only then will the government impose a tax of 35%. For the self-employed or those with their own businesses and professionals earning 250,000 pesos, an 8% tax would be imposed on them. If their earnings exceed 3 million pesos, they will have to pay a 30% tax. The proposal would revise the 1997 tax code, which has 7 levels of taxing depending on the salary of businesses. The Tax Management Association says the proposal will not encourage growth in the business sector.
If you're under 8%, there's that tendency to really control the growth of your the gross sales or gross receipts, which actually may also be, it will run counter to the government's initiative to really encourage entrepreneurship.
The Finance Department, meanwhile, says they are now planning to make the proposed 8% tax rate optional.
That is why we are very strong on the optional. The House mandated it to be required.
Despite this, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means says they will thoroughly study the said issue. Senator Sonny Angara notes they are pushing for the proposed law to benefit small businesses in the country.
Sa ngayon, parang kumita ka lang yung maliit na negosyo na kumikita lang ng lampas 100,000, nabubusan na. So gusto natin na bigyan sila ng mas malaking exemption at mabigyan sila ng tsansa na lumaki at lumago ang kanilang negosyo.
Based on the Finance Department's figures, the government was able to collect 31 billion pesos from the self-employed and professionals in 2014 and 42.5 billion pesos in 2015. However, of the 2.3 million registered professionals and businesses in the country, only more than 575,000 are filing their income taxes and not all are paying their tax duties. This prompted some stakeholders to call on the Senate to also look into the number of professionals paying their taxes. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Department of Finance expresses confidence that the proposed tax reform package will also be approved by the Senate. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
Though there are reports that the deliberation in the Senate on the tax reform package bill will be difficult, the Department of Finance is confident that it will still be passed in the upper house. Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez said they will be able to convince the senators through the facts and figures behind the proposed law.
If you stay where you are now without improving your revenues, you might not be able to get the infrastructure program done right.
The secretary also said many stakeholders are supporting the bill, including businessmen, economists, foreign funding agencies, and wage earners. If the bill will be implemented in 2018, the government can accumulate an incremental revenue of more than 130 billion pesos to be used for the government's programs such as infrastructure, housing, education, health, and social protection. However, the economic managers of the Duterte administration want to retain the tax reform package as it is expected to gain revenue not lower than 130 billion pesos, especially that the infrastructure projects of the government will be funded through this.
We cannot just invest by borrowing. We have to raise our own money. And this is the reason why we are doing this tax reform.
The official also denies reports that the tax reform package is anti-poor.
First of all, there is a cash transfer program element in the tax reform program. Number two, with better roads, with better bridges, with better Wi-Fi infrastructure, more investments will come in and more jobs will open up for the poor people. Right? So they will benefit.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Meanwhile, the House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability says it will not coerce Majority Floor Leader Rodolfo Fariñas to inhibit from the 66 million peso Ilocos Norte excise tax anomaly investigation. This is despite the fact that the probe is being tainted with politics due to the dispute between the Marcos and Fariñas families, who are both from Ilocos.
It would be very unfair if we will really request him to inhibit. Kasi siya nga ang he's one, no? Hindi siya, pero he's one. He's the one, one of the principal authors requesting for the inquiry. Then ipapa-inhibit mo. Useless pa na siya nag-sponsor, no? Hindi ba?
The committee is expecting Governor Amy Marcos to attend to the July 25th hearing so that the House body can finish its report and decide on whether or not to file complaints against the Lady Governor. In other news, the National Food Authority, or NFA, has invited the private bidders for the country's importation of rice. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
The government is set to import a total of 250,000 metric tons of rice amounting to 5.6 billion pesos. The NFA, or National Food Authority, has now opened the bidding process and opens it to the private exporters regardless of their origin, because the NFA Council's approved scheme is government to private. Countries that are common bidders include Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Pakistan.
Sabi nga ng council, mas maraming bidders kasi mas competitive.
Rice should be well milled or 25% broken long grain white, just like the kind of rice the NFA is selling in markets for 32 pesos a kilogram. 120,000 metric tons of the imported rice are expected to arrive in August, while the remaining 130,000 metric tons are expected in September. NFA's buffer stock for the month of July should be enough for 30 days. However, it holds only enough for 6 days. The NFA Council leaves other importation process to the private sector. Nevertheless, NFA assures it can supply rice to any part of the country in the event of a tropical cyclone or other calamities.
Kung kailangan na bawasan ang allocation ng mga retailers, ay babawasan yon. Dahil ang prioridad ng NFA yung food security in times of calamities and emergencies.
Ray Pilayo, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Meanwhile, the second Firefighter Summit has kicked off today. During the opening of the event, DILG Assistant Secretary Rico Judge Echeverry called on the Bureau of Fire Protection to end corruption in their ranks. Leslie Longbowen tells us why.
Department of the Interior and Local Government Assistant Secretary Rico Judge Echeverry says he personally experienced fixing from fire inspectors in Quezon City.
Directly akong hiningan ng 120,000. So, it's not another person but me personally. Hindi niya alam na Assistant Secretary ko who heads the Bureau of Fire and DGMP. I managed to talk to that Vice Mayor. Sabi niya talagang rampant na sa syudad na yon.
Echeverry is decided to file a complaint and wants to look into this issue of corruption. Meanwhile, BFP-NCR is willing to cooperate to resolve such issue.
This is already in the system, no? So we want to cure that. Of course, I'm very willing to really, file necessary charges if we found out that there are really unexisting malpractices of our personnel. Then
Echeverry was one of the officials who graced the second Firefighter Summit in Quezon City today. Fire officers, marshals, and volunteers from different parts of the country have joined the summit that focuses on electrical fire, LPG, and high-rise building safety.
So this is very timely considering that based on our record, a lot of fire incident is caused by electrical in nature. So the second common cause of fire is also about LPG. No? So marshals should have the idea and the knowledge on how to address, how to respond. No?
Philippine Economic Zone Authority updates in connection with the recent fire issues in Resorts World and House Technology Industries in Cavite will also be discussed in the summit. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The meeting of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly are hosted by the Philippines this week as discuss strategies to fight illegal drugs in the Southeast Asian region. Joyce Balancho is in Pasay City to tell us why live. Good evening, Joyce.
Yes, good evening, William. Congressmen from the House of Representatives led the 13th meeting of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly Fact-Finding Committee, or the IFACOM. The Philippines, being the host of the said meeting, led the discussion which focused on different strategies and means on how to fight illegal drugs in the Southeast Asian region. In his opening speech, House Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez underscored the need to address the proliferation of illegal drugs, saying that the ASEAN community has become a transshipment hub by organized crime groups. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime said that methamphetamine, also known as shabu, and heroin are the two most abused drugs in the Southeast Asian region, and there's also a growing addiction to the new synthetic drugs called the new psychoactive substances, or the NPS. IFACOM Chair Congressman Robert Ace Barber said that they have presented Oplang Tokhang and Oplang Double Barrel to member countries of the ASEAN for them to emulate. He claimed that the Philippine strategy is an effective one.
Perhaps the Tokhang, which worked for us, will probably work for them. This has been an effective strategy of the administration in convincing. In fact, there are more than 100,000 surrenderies from the time that we implemented the operation.
On the other hand, the Philippines also took note of other mechanisms implemented by other ASEAN countries that were considered effective in curbing illegal drugs. This includes the imposition of death penalty as a deterrent, as well as making schools and workplaces drug-free through continuous random drug testing. The IPA Secretary General noted that it was a healthy discussion between nations.
We learn from each other. We'll take the good, the bad, and what works and what doesn't work from all the countries, and then we'll adapt that and adopt that to make it something that works for that country. Because what works in the Philippines might not work in Thailand. What works in Thailand might not work in the Philippines or other countries itself.
The IFOCOM also released a resolution proposing the body to be transformed into IPA Advisory Council on Dangerous Drugs, or IPACOD, which will focus on its role and mandate as a parliamentary tool to combat dangerous drugs in the region. Congressman Robert Ace Barbers, in a press conference, clarified that the issue of extrajudicial killings as well as the alleged human rights violations as criticisms to our drug war, these were never discussed or mentioned during the entire discussion of the IFOCOM, and the nations just focus on sharing the best practices that they can do or that they can share to each other so that nations can help out each other in addressing the common problem of drugs. William?
Yes, thank you very much, Joyce Balancio, live from Pasay City.
The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, has been strict in its implementation of the modified Anti-Distracted Driving Act, which starts today. Rajel Adora tells us why.
Personnel of the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, can monitor the situation on the roads inside its metro base through high-definition CCTV cameras that can zoom in on vehicles. With this, the agency can examine if a driver follows or violates the law. MMDA's figure shows a total of 112 apprehensions as of 7 p.m. in the entire Metro Manila for just today. The agency's CCTV can see through even heavily tinted vehicles.
The advantage of the CCTVs is makikita mo kung may ilaw na nagre-reflect dun sa mukha ng driver.
Under the law, texting, calling, playing of games, watching of movies, or surfing on the internet using any electronic device is prohibited under the law. But it allows the use of cell phones only during emergency situations or for navigational purposes. Violators will face penalties. 5,000 pesos for the first offense, 10,000 pesos for the second offense, 15,000 pesos for the third offense, and suspension of driver's license, and 20,000 pesos and cancellation of license for the fourth offense. Through the no-contact apprehension policy of the MMDA, erring drivers will receive notice of violation within 2 to 3 days.
May mga insidente na sasakyan mo pero ginamit ng kamag-anak mo. No worries, dahil naka-attach naman doon sa iyong summon, yung ebidensya, yung screen cap. And you have to clear it with us para kung sino yung nagdadrive, siya yung isasummon natin.
The MMDA advises motorists to follow the law as they might face multiple penalties in just one day.
Nakita natin na in just a day, naka-apat ka. So in just one day, pwede ka mawalan ng lisensya.
Rajel Adora, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, has yet to approve the renewal of accreditation of transport network companies for them to continue their operations. Joanna will tell us why.
GrabPH accreditation has expired on July 3. Despite their submission of the necessary requirements for renewal to the Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, the agency has not yet approved their application. Meanwhile, Uber's accreditation is set to expire on August, yet the company has not yet submitted the renewal documents to LTFRB. Despite this, LTFRB assures that the operation of the two companies will not be suspended.
Ang nabanggit naman ni Chairman is tuloy pa rin po ang operations as of now. Sa ating mga both passengers and sa drivers, please believe that we will not go anywhere. We are here to stay because we know that the good this service has given to the riding population.
LTFRB explains that it understands the necessity of the services of transport network companies, considering that public transportation is one of the major problems in the country.
We see the need ng demand ng public, no, that there is a really niche for them. Ang ating lang gusto gawin is we polish and ensure enforcement that they are compliant kasi kami rin mananagot sa mga riding public.
Some of the complaints received by LTFRB were discourtesy on some TNVS drivers, sexual abuses, and unregistered vehicles, among others. It was in July 2016 when LTFRB issued a moratorium suspending the application of TNVS because of their growing numbers. Based on the data of the agency, there are around 3,000 registered TNVS nationwide at present. More than 15,000 applications have already been rejected. Joanna, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The Department of Health cautions the public of common illnesses acquired on rainy days. Aiko Miguel explains why.
Diseases are more prevalent during rainy season. Thus, the Department of Health reminds the public to take measures to prevent rainy day-related illnesses or what it calls as wild diseases.
Ingatan niyo yung wild diseases, waterborne, pagtatae, influenza, ubot-sipon yun, leptospirosis at dengue.
DOH says it is important to keep drinking water clean to avoid diarrhea and other waterborne diseases. Health centers provide water purification tablets free of charge to make sure drinking water is not contaminated, especially that coming from deep well.
Tandaan nyo, pag may malakas na ulan, pagbaha, maaaring magkaroon ng contamination. So ang gagawin natin, kung hindi tayo magpapakulo ng tubig, pumunta kayo sa health center, meron tayong mga tableta ron para magamit yun sa disinfection.
It is also helpful to prevent flu by eating nutritious food like fruits and vegetables rich in vitamin C. Health centers offer free flu vaccination to senior citizens and free consultation to children showing symptoms of bronchopneumonia such as palpitation, fever, and loss of appetite.
Tinuruan na namin mga barangay health worker kung paano makita ang mga senyales ng bronchopneumonia sapagkat yun nakamamatay sa bata.
It is also important to avoid wading in floodwater, especially when having an open wound, because floodwater can be contaminated with urine of rodents or infected animals and could lead to contracting leptospirosis.
Maninilaw yung balat nyo, mamumulay yung mata, ihi nyo, kulay tsaa, may lagnat kayo, pumunta na kayo sa ospital.
Check the surroundings for stagnant water, which can be a breeding ground for dengue-carrying mosquitoes. Tayag said, dengue-carrying mosquitoes breeding season is from August to September, so it is important to always remember the 4S strategy. DOH also strictly reminds the public not to self-medicate but consult a doctor for proper diagnosis and be given the rightful medicine. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
Those are the reasons behind the news, July 6, 2017. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am William Theo.
And I'm Darlene Basingan because we need to know.
We will always ask why. Thank you for watching. Why News.